In this tutorial, what we're going to do is take a look at preparing our first logo for our identity package. So let's begin by opening up the logo that you have, and we're going to clean out all of the junk from this logo and so we can prepare it properly. So the first thing that we want to do is get rid of any swatches that we're not using. So let's go ahead and delete all unused swatches. And then I'm going to even delete that one right there. The two swatches that I have left are black and white, and that's very, very typical. You'll notice that I've got the orange and the yellow and the red here that don't actually have swatches. So we're going to find out why. Now, I would also remove all brushes. So we'll select all used and then hit delete. And all symbols, select all, and delete. And then even all graphic symbols that we're not using. Select all unused, and then delete. Very important that we clean out our file of all unnecessary junk. Now, the next thing that we would want to do is actually create spot colors for our most important colors. Of course, black and white we don't need spot colors for because we already have black and white always. For the actual colors, we are going to want to make some sort of spot color, whether it's RGB, CMYK, or something like Pantone. Now, do be aware that this color mode right now is an RGB color. If your file is in CMYK color mode, I think it's a good way right nowadays. I think it's best to start in RGB color because especially this logo is really meant to be on the desktop. It's not meant to be in print all the time. So the color that will be used most of the time will be RGB. So it's important to start off that way. Now, traditionally, when we have chosen colors, we would use something like a swatch library, such as a color book like Pantone Solid Uncoded. And we would find the color that we want, like 199, and I know that's a red color, and it looks a little pinkish to me on the screen, but I know that the official Pantone red is like corporate red that you see all over the place. And that is not exactly what I see on screen here. So if I were to apply this color, even though I know when it would print it would be the right color, on screen it might not look exactly right. And that could be some color maintenance stuff that I actually have, or management stuff that I need to do on my computer. Instead, I'm actually going to use the RGB values to create my spot colors. So let's go into your logo if you have one and find the color that you want to make a spot color for. And you can either drag it from up here or over from here, or you can hit new spot color. It doesn't really matter, or new swatch. And we're going to create a color from that and choose spot color. Now let's not worry about the spot name, but if you wanted to change the swatch name, you could call it, red for Ubuntu Red if you wanted to. I think it's fine to have it have the name. Now we'd want to create that for all the other colors that we have as well. Spot color. And then of course the yellow would need one as well. Now, oops, I didn't make it a spot color. Spot color. There we go. And let's make sure that's being used. And then the red, let's make sure that's being used. And the orange is being used. And you'll see it's being used by the little white outline that goes around it. Of course, the black doesn't really matter. If we click on this, it doesn't actually show that color. Let me click on something else real quick. If I click on the black, well, it is associating with it. So that's good. Maybe that's a good thing for us to do here. Now, another thing that I did want to note about this particular item here is that I have a really, really thin text, and I think that's a little bit too thin. I think it should be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to add a little stroke to it. Now, if I add a stroke to it, maybe 1 point, you'll notice you have to be very careful when you apply strokes. Because if I made a copy of this and I scaled this up, typically it won't always scale up the strokes. You'll see mine scaled up to 1.358 points. The question is why? Well, in the Edit Preferences, in the General Preferences, you have the ability to set scaling and strokes and effects so that when you scale them, it will scale them proportionally to whatever you had set them at originally. And if that's not turned on, if you scale this, what it will do is it will re-render that stroke on the new scale, and it will be thin versus what it was before. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I don't really like the position of that eye, so I'm going to give just a little bit more distance there, just a tiny bit more, just to give a little bit more separation between them. Now that I have that done, what I should do is take all of that text where it has a stroke and expand it. By expanding the fills and the strokes, we actually make it so it's only fills and no strokes at all. You'll see we can verify that over here when we look at our swatches. What we want to do at this point is actually meld all the stuff together with the Pathfinder so that we don't have any internal geometry that's going on there. So now it's always set the way that we intend it to be. So that's a really important thing that you go ahead and fix that if you have any logos with issues such as that. Now that I have my final logo, let's get an idea of about what type of shape this particular logo takes out or takes over. So I'm going to go ahead and make a quick little rectangle. And one of the things I'm going to do with this is just go ahead and make it, just a black outline. And I can even change this actually to a grayscale, which I think is nice. So, oops, let me go back to that stroke, select it. One thing I like to do is go to grayscale. And what this does is allow me to just go ahead and change the numbers of whatever is my current thing. I'm going to change it to something like 40 maybe. 40 is close. There you go. If you want to, you can go ahead and make a swatch for that color as well. And if we went and looked at it, typically you might even see that it's a percentage of a color. So if I were to select an actual color and then create a swatch from that, you'll see it actually becomes 48% in this case of that swatch color. So I really like the black and white, or let's say the grayscale color options up here when you're working with spot colors and such, just because it gives you a really nice way of getting the color to be consistent. So anyway, now that I have this object, I want to make sure that we have our smart guides turned on. And the reason why is we want to snap this object to the outside of our box, of our logo, just to make sure that we are really trying to figure out how much space is taken up with this logo. So it looks like that's about right there. Now what we want to do is create some sort of clear space around this logo. And we've got a lot of different options. We could use one of the heights of the letters, or we could use maybe the height of one of these, I guess, people, or we could even use one of the circles. Heck, I think that actually might work. So I'm going to take that and copy it out of there, go back to the main level, paste it, make it that gray. There we go, just grade fill. And now I'm going to take and put it outside of the place where it's actually intersecting. Seems to be touching there, and it seems to be touching here. So that's a pretty good place to do it. Now you'll see that that shows pretty much where we're getting, where those are coming from. Now we might want to get that aligned as well as we possibly can. There we go, even better. And now I'm going to copy this line and duplicate it to the outside and snap it to those objects. Let's see. Oops. Somehow I moved that. Looks like, oh, come on. Work for me. There we go. Looks like that is correct. So now everything is what we want there. And now I'm going to select these lines again. I'm going to make them a consistent point value. And I like to turn these so that they're dashed lines, because this shows you a good indication of where the clear space is going to be around your logo. And you can even make these guys that are here, I'd even make them smaller. Or, sorry, not smaller, lighter. I think that it's a good idea for them to be pretty darn light. But here's a good place for us to save this logo. I'm going to call this logo, this is the Ubuntu Linux logo with clear space. And the reason why we're saving this, and I'm just going to do Illustrator CS